At his wedding, surrounded by chandeliers, champagne, and 200 of society's elite, Logan Brooks was about to say, "I do," when he saw something no one else noticed. In the shadows behind the crystal-clear elegance, a 5-year-old girl in a maid's uniform quietly wiped down a table. Her sleeves were too long, her hands were trembling, and her eyes were his daughter's. Sophie, not a guest, not part of the celebration. She was part of the staff, hidden, silenced, forgotten. And suddenly Logan's entire world began to crack. Why was his daughter working at his own wedding? Who let this happen? And what else had he been blind to in his quest for the perfect life? The answer would unravel everything: his relationship, his reputation, and the future he thought he wanted. What would you do if the most important person in your life was quietly erased from the biggest day of it? Stay with us. This isn't just a story about a man who walked away from a wedding. It's about a father who finally chose to show up for the one person who needed him most, and nothing will ever be the same again. Logan Brooks was living the dream. At least that's what everyone said. A self-made millionaire, founder of a leading tech startup, and now finally standing at the altar with Aubrey Sinclair, the most sought-after socialite in New York. The wedding was the talk of the season. The guest list, a who's who of power and prestige, CEOs, Hollywood A-listers, even a senator or two. It was the kind of event where the champagne flowed like water and every napkin was monogrammed in gold. The venue, his own estate, the Brooks Cliffside Estate in Nantucket, a palace carved into the cliffs above the Atlantic. From the outside, everything was perfect, too perfect. But that's the thing about perfection. It can hide just about anything, even a child. As guests mingled beneath the glittering chandeliers, Logan stood tall in his custom-tailored tux, flanked by his groomsmen. Flashbulbs popped, champagne flutes clinked, and Aubrey, radiant in her designer gown, was making her grand entrance. Then Logan's eyes caught something that didn't belong. Near the back of the ballroom, close to the service quarter, a small figure was wiping down a table, tiny hands struggling to handle a cloth too big for her grip. Her black maid's uniform hung off her frame like a costume. He blinked, thinking it was a mistake, a trick of the light. But then she turned. Sophie, his daughter, 5 years old. The little girl he had tried to protect from the media, from his high-profile life. The one he had left in the care of staff and distant routines, convincing himself it was for her own good. And now, she was cleaning tables at his wedding? What would you do if you saw your own child, the one you've been hiding from the world, hidden even deeper in plain sight, as part of the help? Logan froze. His blood went cold. His breath caught in his chest. Why was Sophie here? Who brought her? Who allowed this? He made his way toward her, eyes darting to see if anyone else had noticed. They hadn't. They were too busy admiring Aubrey's gown, the orchestra, the luxury. No one saw the little girl in the shadows. Sophie didn't see him coming. She was too focused, wiping a spotless table as if her life depended on it. Sophie? Logan knelt beside her, his voice barely above a whisper. She flinched, turned. Her eyes, so wide, so innocent, locked onto his. Her mouth quivered. Daddy? That word shattered something inside him. He glanced down at her uniform, her trembling hands, the confusion in her face. Why are you dressed like this? What are you doing? Sophie looked around nervously, then leaned in and whispered. Aubrey said I could be here if I helped clean. She said, I don't belong in the pictures. Silence, not just around them, inside him. His ears rang. He couldn't speak, couldn't think. That voice, Aubrey's voice, echoed through his mind. I don't belong in the pictures. Had he really been so blind, so focused on building the perfect life, the perfect image, that he didn't notice the one person who should have been front and center was pushed to the margins? And what kind of woman was he about to marry? I'm sorry, he said, his throat dry. You don't belong back here. You belong with me, in the pictures, in everything. But before he could say more, a voice boomed behind him. There you are, my boy. It was Richard Hawthorne, one of Logan's oldest investors. Logan stood up slowly, his mind still spinning. Just a second, he said quickly, then turned back to Sophie, kneeling again. I'll fix this. You hear me? I'll fix everything. But Sophie didn't smile. She looked down, her hands twisting the cloth again. Aubrey said I have to stay hidden. The words cut deeper than any blade. Logan rose to his feet, heart pounding. The ceremony was about to start. Everyone was waiting. But something inside him had snapped. He wasn't walking down the aisle like this. Not without facing the truth. Sorry to pause here, but we need a moment to breathe, because what Logan does next will change the course of not only the wedding, but his entire life. Now let me ask you, if you were Logan, would you call off the wedding right then and there, or wait until the ceremony was over? And if your partner asked you to hide your child for the sake of their image, could you ever trust them again? Tell us what you do, and tell us where you're watching from. If this story hit you, please give it a like, drop a heart, and share it with someone who believes children deserve to be seen, not silenced. Logan Brooks didn't return to the altar. Instead, he stormed through the halls of the estate he had built with sweat and ambition, moving with a precision that startled the staff who passed him. His fists were clenched, but it wasn't just anger. It was something far worse. Shame. How had he missed it? How had he not seen the way Aubrey looked at Sophie? How many other moments had he ignored, excused, or dismissed in the name of keeping the peace? And now, his daughter, his own daughter, was wiping tables like a servant at the very wedding meant to celebrate his future. But what kind of future was this? As he reached the back kitchens, he found Sophie again, still wiping, still trying not to be seen, still obeying the voice of someone who wanted her erased. He knelt beside her. "Sweetheart," he whispered, "you don't ever have to do this again. You're not someone's maid. You're my daughter." Her big eyes flicked toward the kitchen door. "But Aubrey said I'd ruin everything." What do you do when the person you're about to marry thinks your child is the problem? Not the priority? That's when Aubrey appeared, flawless, poised, and terrifying in her stillness. "What are you doing back here?" she asked coldly. Her voice was sugar-dipped as steel. "You're supposed to be out front." Logan stood up slowly. "You told my daughter she doesn't belong, that she has to work, clean, to be allowed near me?" Aubrey blinked, but she didn't flinch. "I did what was best for the moment. You know how sensitive the press is, how careful we have to be. This wedding is about us." "No," Logan said. "It was never about us if you think that little girl doesn't matter." Aubrey's eyes narrowed. "You're making a scene. This is your career, Logan. Your reputation. Do you know how much damage you'll do if this gets out? Do you know what you'll throw away?" He didn't answer. He looked at Sophie, at the cloth in her hand, at the shoes too big for her feet, the fear in her shoulders, the way she shrank from Aubrey's voice. Aubrey stepped closer. "You promised me a clean future, a future without baggage." That word. Baggage. Logan stepped between them. "She's not baggage. She's my blood. She's my entire world. And you just revealed who you really are." The staff stopped moving. Even the sound of plates being stacked seemed to fade. And in that moment, Logan made a decision he hadn't seen coming. Not in his most private fears, not in his most desperate dreams. He took Sophie's hand and turned his back on Aubrey. She didn't follow him. She didn't apologize. She didn't beg. She simply stared, her arms folded, lips trembling with the rage of a woman who realized her perfect life was slipping from her diamond ring fingers. Logan walked Sophie through the side corridor, away from the marble staircase, away from the music and laughter and luxury. He didn't know exactly where he was going, but he knew what he was leaving. Then came the moment of truth. They entered the grand ballroom, and everything stopped. All 200 guests turned to face him. Some mouths dropped open, others whispered. Every camera in the room clicked simultaneously. He felt Sophie's hand tighten in his. Logan didn't care. He walked with purpose, straight to the stage where the minister still stood awkwardly by the floral archway. He didn't look at the guests. He looked at Sophie. Then he turned to the crowd. "I was supposed to be getting married today," he began, voice steady but filled with something raw. "But something happened that made me realize I've been chasing the wrong kind of forever." A hush fell. Even the music had stopped. I built a life, he continued, on control, on optics, on illusion. But what I saw today, what I almost missed, was the truth. He looked down at his daughter. This is Sophie. She's 5. She's brilliant. She's kind. And today she was told she didn't belong in this room. Gasps echoed, heads turned. Even a few shocked expressions turned to murmurs of disbelief. She was told she could be here, only if she worked. Logan's voice hardened. No child should be forced to clean their way into love. A single clap broke the silence. Then another. It wasn't everyone, but it was enough. Sophie looked up at her father like she was seeing the sun for the first time. At the back of the room, someone hissed a curse. A woman stormed out in heels. Aubrey! But Logan didn't watch her go. He knelt down to Sophie again. You're not just part of the story. You are the story. She hugged him, tight, and he realized for the first time in years he could breathe. Sorry to pause here, but before we get to the final chapter of this story, let me ask you something personal. What would you do if someone you loved deeply turned out to reject your child? And if standing up for your child meant losing everything you thought you wanted? Would you still choose them? Tell me below, and let us know what country you're watching from. If this story stirred something in you, please like this video, tap the heart, and share it with someone who believes family comes first. The ballroom had never been this quiet. 200 of the city's wealthiest, most powerful guests, all in designer gowns and tailored suits, were staring at a man in a crumpled tuxedo and a little girl in oversized shoes. Logan Brooks could feel their eyes, their questions, their judgment, but he didn't flinch, because for the first time in years, he was standing for something that mattered. Not legacy, not headlines, not perfection, but love and truth. He took Sophie's hand and led her off the stage, past murmuring guests and frozen photographers. He didn't stop until they reached the grand exit of the estate, the place that had once been his greatest achievement. Now it felt more like a prison built out of glass and silence. Behind him, someone called out, a voice he knew too well. Logan. He turned. Aubrey stood in the middle of the ballroom, her veil removed, her eyes blazing. You can't just walk away, she said. Not like this. You're ruining everything. No, he said calmly. I'm saving it. She laughed, shaky, desperate. You're throwing away your future for a child you barely know. Sophie flinched. Logan stepped in front of her protectively. She's my daughter, he said, and you knew that, and you still told her to hide, to serve. That's not a mistake, Aubrey. That's a choice, and I won't make your mistake mine. She looked at him for a long moment. Then her expression shifted, not sorrow but fury. This is going to follow you forever. You'll be the man who walked out on his own wedding. He nodded. Let them say that. I'd rather be that man than the one who stayed quiet. And with that, he turned and walked out, with Sophie beside him. The sun was setting over the cliffs of Nantucket, casting a golden hue on the sea. It should have been the hour of his first dance. Instead, it became the beginning of something else, something real. He crouched down by Sophie, brushing a lock of hair from her face. You okay? He asked. She nodded. You didn't leave me. No, he whispered, and I never will again. They drove through the twilight, windows down, the wind carrying away the remains of the day. Logan didn't have a plan, but he had clarity, and sometimes that's enough. In the days that followed, headlines erupted. Some praised him, others mocked. One tabloid called it the most expensive exit in wedding history. Another called him the billionaire who chose his daughter over his bride. And strangely, Logan didn't mind either version, because both were true. He moved into a quiet brownstone in Boston's South End, far from the media frenzy. He enrolled Sophie in a local school, walked her there each morning with a coffee in hand and her tiny fingers gripping his. He started learning the rhythm of real fatherhood, not the weekend visit version, but the messy, imperfect, everyday kind. Hair tangles, science projects, story time, and spilled juice. At night, after Sophie fell asleep, he sometimes stared at the ceiling and asked himself, what if I had gone through with it? What if I had chosen silence? What if she had grown up believing she wasn't enough? Those questions haunted him, and saved him. Weeks passed. One evening, Sophie came to him holding a drawing. It was a picture of the two of them, stick figures with matching smiles, standing under a banner that read, "Our real wedding." He laughed. "Is this what you want?" Sophie grinned. "Yeah, but you don't need a big dress or guests. Just me and cake." "Deal," he said, voice thick with emotion. Months later, Logan Brooks stood in a small backyard, under string lights and a paper arch made by Sophie and her art teacher. He wasn't marrying anyone that day. He was vowing something bigger, to never let anything or anyone make her feel small again. Because in the end, family isn't what the world sees in photos. It's what you choose when no one's watching. Sorry to interrupt here, but let me leave you with two questions. If Logan had chosen to stay silent, just to protect his image, how do you think that would have changed Sophie's future? And what would you have done if someone told your child they didn't belong? Now we'd love to hear your thoughts. What did you think of Logan's choice? If this story moved you, comment 3 below. If you feel unsure, type 2. If it didn't quite hit you, be honest. 1 is okay too. And tell us, what country are you watching from? If this story touched your heart, like the video, tap that heart and share it with someone who believes in the power of second chances and choosing love over pride.